Welcome to Studio Berlin, dear audience. Today we are hosting a truly extraordinary and also inspiring woman who tries to understand our universe, secrets of our universe, by bringing science and also spirituality together. Dr. Jude Currivan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tugbra. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting our invitation. It's a big honor to see you here on IPN. Dear audience, Dr. Jude Currivan is a visionary quantum physicist and also cosmologist, a graduate of Oxford University. And also, she's not only a scientist, she's also an author and consciousness healer, researcher, and for me, everything. And like gold. Welcome again. Let me begin with your book called Cosmic Hologram. It's also translated into Turkish and it's valuable for me. And also, you talk about the universe as a conscious being with a holographic nature, dear doctor. How would you explain this in the simplest way to someone who knows nothing about physics? You know,
Absolutely.
how would you?
Well, first of all, you made the point that I would say that our universe is conscious. And the reason I would say that is we now know, and this is really important, this is evidence based. This isn't just some great idea, even though it's an idea that we've been taught by spiritual traditions and teachings for millennia, for thousands of years. Nonetheless, now we have the evidence at all scales of existence, from the tiniest to the whole universe and across many different fields of research, that's pointing in the direction very powerfully that the appearance of our universe, its energy and matter and space time, its appearance is real, but it's not its deeper nature. And that appearance, the appearance of our universe, emerges from deeper realms of universal intelligence and causation, cosmic mind,
Yeah.
as Einstein called it. So, in that sense, cosmic mind, an eternal, infinite cosmos, really has created a universe, our universe, more as a great thought than a great thing. So, in that regard, mind and consciousness, they're not what we have, they are what we and the whole world are. So, in that regard, and I'm talking literally here, I'm not talking about, an idea or a story. I'm talking about this is where the evidence is showing us that our universe meaningfully exists and purposefully evolves as a universal thought, as a conscious, living,
Yeah.
evolving universe. And when you talk about the holographic principle, again, this isn't just a great idea that we just threw
Yeah.
together. Although, I'm not averse to great ideas being thrown together. But this understanding came from a study of black holes. And the question was when when a huge star at the end of its life runs out of its fuel, its nuclear fuel, it can't shine anymore. It can't hold itself up anymore. It collapses. It gravitationally collapses. And in massive stars, there's nothing to stop that collapse. And if you think of a star is a sphere. Yeah. Our
Yeah.
sun is a star, it's a sphere. When a massive star collapses into what's called a black hole, and it's called a black hole because that collapse gets to a point where not even light can escape. Yeah. So that is a threshold called the event horizon. So at the event horizon, as the star continues to collapse, we can't see it. But the question is, okay, what happens to all the information that tells the
Yeah.
story of that star? What happens?
Where did it go? Yeah.
Well, and if it goes out of our universe, then we may as well start again because the whole of quantum physics is wrong. So quantum physics says it has to somehow stay and on the event horizon. Okay. So that event horizon, that spherical event horizon, which is a threshold where beyond that, we can't, the continuing collapse happens into the black hole. So all that information is actually held on the event horizon. So that was the first step. But then the second step is, okay, what is the measure of that information? Because you'd think, we're talking about a sphere here, three-dimensional sphere here, you'd think that that information was proportional to the volume of the sphere. Just as a
Yeah.
book, if you've got a book, right, the thicker the book, the bigger the book in 3 dimensions, the more information is held within that book. But that's not what we found. We found that the information, instead of being proportional to the volume within the event horizon, was proportional to the surface area. Uh-oh, now we're in new territory, because that reminds everyone of how a hologram works. Because for a hologram, we bounce light off an object and reflect it back, and it brings all sorts of information about that object. But then all that information is actually positioned on a 2-dimensional surface. Yeah. But when another light beam is flowed through that surface, a 3-dimensional hologram of that original object is projected. So we were thinking, okay, so the information of a massive star, a black hole, is proportional to its 2-dimensional surface. What if? So some very clever folks expanded that understanding to the whole universe and said, okay, what if the appearance of our universe is actually a cosmic hologram? It's a projection of
Hmm.
information, universal information, from the boundary of what we call space and time. And when that understanding came forward, everything started to fit into place. And all the evidence ever since that understanding is continuing to support that view, because we find the mathematical patterns that we find in human holograms, the patterns of information, we find them throughout our entire universe, from the smallest to the largest. They're called fractals. There's other mathematical descriptions that come into this, but we're finding throughout our universe all the same mathematical relationships and patterns that go into making our technology of a hologram. But this is our universe, literally as a hologram. It's nonetheless real. It really is real. It's just the simplest way in which an infinite, eternal genius that we call cosmic mind creates our
Yeah.
universe.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to ask, what is purpose of our existence? Who are we in this gorgeous system, conscious system? Who are we, Doctor?
That is the meaning and purpose of our existence are the deepest questions, aren't they? They've been with us, I suspect, since we first became human beings. We've told stories, we've shared narratives that actually enables us to find or to discover wisdom in the meaning and purpose of who we are, where we come from. And so what this new understanding, which is ancient understanding, is showing that our universe meaningfully exists because the information that emerges as its appearance is relational, is perfectly, exquisitely, interdependently relational within its wholeness. So right from the get-go, nearly 14 billion years ago, our universe has embodied meaning. And because of the way it was so perfect, exquisitely fine tuned and ordered from the very first moment, that's enabled it to evolve from original simplicity to ever greater levels of complexity and self-awareness. So you and I are having this conversation 14 billion years
Yeah.
after our universe began, and began in such a way that it was able to meaningfully evolve ever greater levels of complexity, so that we can have this conversation and we can ask these questions. And now, which comes together with universal wisdom teachings, is
Yeah.
showing us that yes, our universe in its entirety has meaning. So we have meaning. Our universe in its entirety has evolutionary purpose. So we have evolutionary purpose. We are, and this is a long way of saying it, but we are the microcosmic co-creators of our universe's
Yeah.
ongoing evolutionary arc. We're like cells in the body of our universe.
Yeah.
We're inseparable. We're each unique, but we're inseparable from each other, our planetary home, and the whole world. So, our meaning as a unique, meaningful, purposeful microcosm of the evolutionary impulse of our universe, I think invites us to remember this is who we really are,
Yeah.
and offers us the invitation to evolve, to become more conscious co-evolutionary partners in this incredible ongoing story, an unfolding story.
Yeah. Thank you. And I know that you have been spiritual experiences since the age of 4. In
Mhm.
an interview, you mentioned traveling between the worlds. So, could you please tell us a little bit more about these experiences? Also, what were they like? What did you feel? And do they still continue? And more.
Thank you. And these are a lifetime, literally. As you said, Tugba, I started to experience these people like Dean Radin, who is the chief scientist at IONS, and many others now refer
Yeah.
to as supernormal. They're not supernatural. They're not paranormal. They're supernormal because they're natural within this understanding of a living, an evolving universe, which is unitive. In other words, it exists and evolves in its entirety, where everything is inseparable from everything else, just different expressions of its holographic nature. So when I was 4, my first experience was I was at
Mhm.
home, and
Mhm. Mhm.
essentially a discarnate light arrived in my room, and at 4 years old it was like,
Oh my God.
okay. No, it was okay. And I started to hear a voice, not with my ears but in my inner hearing,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it was such a lovely voice, such a loving voice, such a kind voice. And
Oh my
over
God.
years I found out that it was Thoth, the ancient Egyptian wisdom teacher. So Thoth has been with me since I was 4 years old. But he then introduced me through so many different experiences to
Oh my
so
God.
many other levels of sentience and archetypal consciousness. So over nearly 70 years, I literally have walked between worlds, all those levels of cosmic sentience, communicating with the elemental realms and deviant realms of our beloved planetary home, Gaia, angelic realms, extraterrestrials, um, archetypal intelligences that have been known as gods and goddesses in many different traditions, but are there as part of our collective and transpersonal and planetary and universal levels of consciousness at discarnate levels. And also, this has given me the opportunity to be able to communicate with animals. They're just it's just different languages. And ultimately, all are the language of the heart, all are the
Yeah.
language of love.
Oh my God. What an experience, and also inspirational, Okay. So, what is it like to meet angels or beings of light? Do these non physical beings also follow what's happening in our world?
Mhm. Well, from a very early age, I was guided that there is not a hierarchy here, in the sense that, you know, we've had perspectives of hierarchies because of our worldview has been,
Mm,
over the last 100 years or so, a worldview of separation. And so with a worldview of separation and a mechanistic understanding of the universe, you know, there's hierarchies, but Mother Gaia doesn't work in hierarchies. An ecosystem doesn't have a hierarchy. It has an interdependent communities of life. And so when I was very small, from the age of being very small, I was told, don't really think or experience of us as hierarchies. Think of us more like a cosmic orchestra of intelligence and consciousness. You know, you wouldn't, in an orchestra, you wouldn't say, well, a violin is more powerful than a piano or a flute or a triangle or whatever. They work together, and the more that we understand, it seems to me that we are inseparable and microcosms of these vast communities, incarnate and discarnate, of universal intelligence. We can learn a huge amount from all of them, but they're not asking us to work. In my experience, it's not about worship, but there is a reverence, there is an honoring, there is a respect,
mm,
there is a love. And so all of my experiences, and I've had some pretty challenging ones, you know, I've worked with folks, discarnate beings who, you know, have been on the, you might say, the dark side, and yet
yeah.
they too are part of what is inseparable. They've just, in their own consciousness, they've lost an understanding of that. They've forgotten that.
Mm,
And yet they cannot be other than part of the whole. So these have been my experiences. It'd take a long time to go through so many of them, but I would really encourage folks to just be open about the possibility of these in their own lives. But you know, Tugba, really the simplest way of being on this journey is to trust our intuition, because our intuition cannot be explained through an old paradigm of separation and materiality. Our intuition is natural because we're part of
yeah.
a unitive universe and a multidimensional
Mm,
universe. Equally, all those supernormal phenomena, they're our heritage.
yeah.
They're our heritage.
But we have judgments in our souls, in our brain. Yeah. Do they have a message for us, dear doctor, to this world, to people who live in this world? Do they have a message?
Yes. And this is a message that comes from so many different levels. But some years ago, I was in a healing circle, a circle of healers sitting around, and one of the things, and some of those folks in the circle had had experiences with extraterrestrial
Yeah,
intelligences, and there was a question that came out of the people in the circle. How was it that the extraterrestrial um, communities or beings that they were having conversations with, how did they have to go through, or did they go through, a time such as ours, a time of turbulence, a time of potential breakdown, all of that? And the answer came back, yes, we did. And then the question was, how did you get through it? How did you survive?
yeah,
And the answer came back immediately. We learned to understand, to experience, and embody unity consciousness. In other words, universal love. That was the only way we could do
yes,
this, to survive and thrive and evolve and be able to have the conversation with us from that perspective.
yeah.
That's the
Thank
message.
you.
That's the message.
Big message.
Big
Oh my
message.
God. All right.
Big message. And yet,
Yes.
perhaps the most simple of messages, the most
Yeah.
simple of messages, and yet with our our worldview of separation, it's an incredibly challenging message. And yet,
Yeah.
if we're able to realize that unity isn't a hope, it's not an aspiration, it's not a goal to aim for, it's it's the ground on which we stand. It's the reality on which we stand, unity in diversity. And I often now say beyond unity in diversity and unity in inclusion, unity in belonging. Because when we know we belong, we feel
Yeah.
safe. We're at home. We're at home. And this is our home. Our universe is our home. Its story is our story. This is who we are. We belong.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to ask, is it possible to consciously and willingly to communicate with angels or extraterrestrials? Is it possible?
For sure, for sure, for sure, for sure it is. What I
Oh,
would say, what I've I've been doing it for nearly
many
70 years.
people trying, but how?
I think the word try isn't the best word to use here. When I'll share this with a story. Some years ago, when I was still, leading workshops, I was in Dublin in Ireland,
Mhm.
and we were at the home of this lovely, lovely lady who was hosting the workshop. And it was a lovely weekend. And before the workshop started, um, she said she'd been trying for years, years, and she was very spiritual. She'd been trying for years to see what are called orbs, which are sort of lights that appear.
Yeah, 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 I know. Yeah.
Yeah, orbs. And she said, I've never been able to. She said, I've tried so hard. So anyway, I said no more, and we went into the workshop. And in the workshop, I just invited us. I just made jokes. I just invited us to laugh, and we did silly things, and we just laughed a lot, and we sang together, and then towards the evening, I took everyone out in the garden, and I said, "Look around you." And she started to cry. She said, "I see
Oh,
orbs." She said, "I see orbs."
I'm about to cry now. Oh my God.
Because, when we move beyond our ego, when we go beyond the thinking, or trying, or, make it about us, and just like children, open
Yeah,
ourselves to
yeah,
joy and love and gratitude, and that's when the communications are so easy. We don't have
yeah,
to try, we don't have to push or pull. We just have to show up in that joy and love and gratitude and enjoy. And it doesn't it's not I can see you cry. You're making me cry as well.
yeah, yeah, we are crying. Oh my God, I didn't plan this. Many
But they're happy tears, I hope. They're happy
Yeah,
tears.
yeah, yeah. Sure, sure, yeah.
But
Thanks, God.
that's my experience, and that was hers, and everyone was so joyous. Yeah. So that's one example, but there are so many. So just be easy, just relax, just be fun and joyous and at peace and grateful and
Yeah,
loving. And life opens up to us. Life opens up to us. All life, all life, all multidimensional wonder of life. And pay attention. The other thing I'd say pay attention to is synchronicities, because
yeah,
synchronicities are just everyday miracles. If we are willing to sort of pay attention and just intuitively be willing to follow where they lead and invite us to. And again, with that sense of joy and wonder, and yeah, my goodness, the adventure we go on.
Dear doctor, many people have these kinds of experiences, but not everyone talks about them. Here in Turkey, an artist once said he had similar experiences and communicated with aliens. He was labeled crazy by many. You know,
Yeah.
why is it unbelievable for many people? Why? Are we afraid of to face with this?
Oh, it's a complex question. It's an important question, because it seems to me, Tugba, that remembering who we are, which we've spoken of, as microcosms, as cells of a living and loving, I would say, an evolving universe, um, we've had this worldview of separation. We've had a worldview that's based on the material appearance of our universe and not its deeper and its whole nature. But we
Mhm.
grew up with that. Our societies grew up with that. Our education grew up with that. And in fact, the science of this worldview, this mechanistic, materialist world
Yeah.
of separation, is actually something like more than 120 years old. It dates back to the 19th century. And at its most powerful then, its technologies drove the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution grew out of this worldview of mechanization and separation. So all of that, the world of exploitation, of more conflicts because of that, this world of separation, the way we teach our children, the worldview that we grew up with, and it's now being turned on its head because the evidence is showing. In the 20th century, when quantum physics and relativity physics came along, they gave us clues. They gave us significant clues of this understanding of wholeness and inseparability and relationships. And the focus, because that mechanistic worldview was still so powerful, all of the deeper questions, the philosophical questions about the
Mhm.
nature of who we are and consciousness and all of that pushed to the side. And so the 20th century took all of these deeper perspectives about about the nature of reality and just focused them on technology. But,
Yeah.
and this is the great but, and now there is so much evidence that's showing that A, they were right in what they were showing us, but we still need to go deeper. And we can go deeper now because of our understanding of information and meaningful information and this
Mhm.
holographic principle I was sharing a little bit about earlier. When we bring those in and when we bring in all the evidence that's showing the patterning that comes from that deeper understanding, we literally bring consciousness, universal consciousness, meaning and
Yeah.
purpose. We literally re-enchant, as my friend Irvin Laszlo sometimes talks to it, we re-enchant our universe. And by doing so, we too are re-enchanted. And this isn't hope. This isn't a few ideas strung together. This is profoundly,
Mm.
simply, and truly the ground of our being. And so now we ask the question, okay, if unity is our existential nature, what next? And for me, the what next is let's come together and link up and lift up with this understanding, because this understanding can empower and inspire transformational change in the world. And people who are talking now about extraterrestrials, I have to tell you, more and more and more are sharing. In the US, there's some major work going on and some major evidence coming out. So the gentleman you refer to who was told he was crazy, I think he's going to have the last laugh, as we say in Britain. I think he's going to have the last laugh because I
Yeah.
think in this coming time, the reality of extraterrestrial contact is going to come into the mainstream. I think it's very close to doing that.
Oh my God. In your view, what is the biggest sign of spiritual awareness?
Love,
Wow.
kindness and love and compassion. When people every day, no, not just on one day a week or when you're in a good mood or all of that,
Yeah.
coming from a place of love and gentleness and kindness in every choice, we make, in every act, in every word, coming from a place of love. Because love is, again, it is the greatest existential relationship of our universe. Our universe is not just living, it is a loving, benevolent universe. Love.
But for many, it's not easy thing. Love, universal love or personal love,
All
inside,
of it.
outside. Yeah. Why? It's not easy.
I
It's
never said
easy
it was
the simplest way. Sorry,
yes,
but you know, it's the most difficult thing for some somebody else.
sure. I you asked earlier about our meaning and purpose. And for
Mhm.
me, the whole journey is a journey to love, to that realization that we are microcosms of a loving universe that's pervaded by universal love, that started 14 billion years ago on this evolutionary journey to experience relationship and to experience interdependence at greater levels of complexity. So our journey is a journey into a remembering, it seems to me, of who we really are. And when we can come together in that understanding, love is our natural way of being. And I don't just mean human love, although that is how we experience it. But the universe breathes through us. The big breath, as I describe it, of our universe, its vastness, breathes through us in our little breaths every moment. We breathe
Mhm.
in the wholeness of our universe and our little breaths and breathe it out. So we're breathing in our living and loving universe through
Mhm.
us in every moment. And if we can breathe out that life and that love, then we serve all life, it seems to me.
Are we together by a chance now, or it's a sign?
Say that again. Are we?
Now we are together by a chance, or
Uh,
is it a sign? Sign of the universe, maybe. I don't know.
I feel it's a sign. I feel, I'm not a great believer in what we call chance or
Yeah.
accident or randomness, because I
Yeah.
look
Yeah.
as a cosmologist, I look as, I've experienced this all my life. And, I look back and I look back at, what I thought were accidents or mistakes or whatever, and I see the journey that's led me to this point. So for me, mistakes are when we don't learn from life. We keep on repeating. It usually hurts us, often
Many
hurts
mistakes.
others. So, okay, that's part of it. But in a way, knowing the power of and the innate unity of all that is. As I say, I don't think there is such a thing as an accident. We came together today in this beautiful opportunity, um, and the perfect timing for us to do so, because you are serving your community with the messages
Mhm.
that you are bringing and all that you do, and I'm aimed to serve the whole world, because this
Yeah.
is the time. We talk about meta crisis because everything is so challenging. But what I'm suggesting is that we reframe this rather than a meta crisis to a metamorphosis. Because the
Yeah.
metamorphosis, a caterpillar goes into a chrysalis and breaks down and breaks through to be a butterfly. And that's my sense of the potential we have at this time to come into this. The old has served us, we've taken the journey to this point. The old has served many, but it's not served many. And it's certainly not served our beloved planetary home and her other children. So we're at a point where we cannot go on as we have been, hence the meta crisis. But that's the time when the caterpillar has gone into a chrysalis and begins that incredible evolutionary journey to become a butterfly. And that's because the evolutionary impulse, the flow
Yeah.
of the universe is flowing through that process. And I would suggest that it's flowing through us, not just you and I, but humanity at this moment. So to see us in this process, sure of challenge, but with metamorphosis, it's also hopeful, because uh, we don't know what sort of butterfly we might come out, but the universe is, it seems to me, promising us trust the process,
Yeah.
love, come
Yeah. Trust.
together, serve, show up, get out of the way, ask what's mine to do and do it to serve the good of the whole. Every one of those choices aids the process, it seems to me, of our metamorphosis and the potential and the possibility of our emergence as human butterflies.
Yeah. Um, an answer always comes by universe when you ask,
Yes,
when you search.
yes.
Mhm.
The thing is, we often don't like the answer. It's like
Okay.
universe
Okay.
says, "Okay." Yeah, the universe
Yeah,
says,
yeah,
"Trust." And we go, "Can I trust? Dare I trust? Should I trust?"
yeah,
The universe says, "Love." And we go, "Oh, dare I love? Should I love? Can I love?"
yeah. Stop, stop. Universe says,
I
stop, please, trust me. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have many questions. So I need to start ask again. Is it really possible to receive messages on our in our dreams?
Yeah. Many
How?
indigenous traditions and communities. I mean, I've traveled to more than 80 countries, and I've had the great privilege to do that and to be with many, many, many different cultures, and including indigenous communities. And the indigenous communities, whether it's Australian Aborigines or
Mhm.
Peruvian communities, Amazonian, African communities, um, value and respect the dream messages, because what they find is the dreams aren't just coming from one person. The
Yeah,
resonance and the coherence in the community experience means that the dreams come through often collectively. So, yes, I mean, I just invite folks to keep a dream journal by their bed and just make
yeah,
notes. Yeah,
I'm
do you do
writing.
that?
Yeah, yeah, I'm writing. Yeah.
And
Oh
how
my
do you
God.
feel? How do you feel it guides you, it helps you to gain insights?
Yes, it's guides. Oh my God, it's like a guide, guidance, and many time
Yeah, yeah.
I wrote. They are important for me too. Dreams, messages. But if you see, there are many people who don't see the messages of their dreams. I believe this. Yeah.
I think again it's about being open. And one of the
Mhm.
things of dream states is that our ego sort of takes a rest. So whereas in a waking state we might say, "Oh no, 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 that's nonsense, that's nonsense." Our dreams speak to us through an easier way, a sort of softer veil,
Yeah.
to offer us guidance. And as you know, Tugba, they often speak in um, symbolism or
Mhm.
archetypes. They don't necessarily do a linear sort of "this is what I am trying to tell you." They will
Yeah.
communicate in more subtle ways than that. But yeah, I think the more we're open to that and just trust that our dreams are guidance and way showers for us, just as synchronicities are, just as our intuition is. And we keep
Mhm.
a dream journal because, of course, when we wake up, often they're so ephemeral. Within a few minutes, we might have lost them. So keeping a dream journal enables us to sort of, write down that and see the pattern and see the journey and see the guidance that we're being offered.
What about telling my dream to somebody else? Is it a good thing or not
Like
necessary?
like anything else, I mean, you referred earlier in our conversation to about sharing and people. My experience is people have far more experiences than they have as yet been willing to share. In indigenous cultures, sharing is part of life. Sharing those stories, sharing those experiences, learning
Mm.
from each other to deepen those experiences is just part of an enormously important part of life. And yet we haven't, we've shut down. Well, first of all, we've done that and shut down a lot of the
Mm.
potential for experience. And secondly, when we have had those experiences, we've tended to either discount them and or not being willing to share them because somebody might say, "You're an idiot, you're a fool, you're crazy." I would just encourage folks to say, "Okay, I'm crazy. Welcome to
Yeah.
my world. Welcome to my world." And but not impose them. I think this is the other side of it, not to impose them on other people, but when there's almost like a naturalness, and the more we come together again, and sit together and be together in community and circle, whether it's small groups of friends or wider groups, and just, feel that we're in a safe space to begin with, and just share from that space, not to try and
Yeah.
make our experiences someone else's experience, but just
Yeah.
yeah, just to share from that space of love and openness. And then I guarantee then the adventure really begins, because then you start to hear back, oh, I had that experience, or this was my experience, and you start to see the weaving, the tapestry of experiences. And you can expand those circles of compassion, you know, and
Yeah.
invite others into them, and then find that you're at a bus stop and somebody says, "Oh, hello, good morning. Oh, it's wonderful the way the universe brings
Yeah.
forward opportunities to share." Um, and I would say just say yes when those opportunities arise.
Dear doctor, let's talk about dreaming and making it happen. Is it possible for everything we dream of to come true? Is it possible to achieve this? What do you think?
We can
Mhm.
imagine things. For example, we can imagine that I am the um, the mountaineer that can climb up Everest and stand on the top. I'm not going to do that in this life. However much I imagine I'm going to climb Everest, I am not going to climb Everest. Can I split an atom with a thought? No. We come into this incarnation, we come into this universe because within space time, within the energy, matter, and space time of our universe, it's a wonderful unfolding thought. And it has principles by which it is able to do that. And one of those is within space time, nothing can go faster than the speed of light, because otherwise we would not have a flow of time over the last 14 billion years. We would not be having this conversation. All, the laws of our universe, the principles of our universe have been there from the beginning to the end. So when we come into incarnation, the manifestation into incarnation,
Mm.
we've agreed to follow those principles. And at the same time, when our consciousness is part of a universal consciousness, which also knows itself in its wholeness. So that is where we can have access. That is where our intuition, that is where our dreams, that is where all the other things, that is where they are and explore and experience. So it's a both and, it's not an either or. Yeah. And so our consciousness transcends our human experience, but it is also embodied within, or a part of that soul consciousness is embodied in this earth walk. And in this earth walk, we signed up to play the earth walk, to dance the earth walk in alignment with the principles of the universe.
Yeah. Dr. Jude, you also do deep research into ancient cosmologies. So I would like to ask you about Göbekli Tepe, and also the world's oldest known structure located in Turkey. Have you had the chance to visit Göbekli Tepe
I have,
before?
yes.
Really? Oh my God. So why do you think Göbekli Tepe was built, and also what might be its secrets? How
Well,
did you feel?
there are others. Göbekli Tepe isn't alone. There's another monumental structure nearby called Karahan Tepe that's now being excavated. And if you go to that area, there may well be others. If you go across Turkey, the Antalya Plain, there are so many mounds that have not been excavated. Now they may well be later, but nonetheless, Turkey, I love Turkey. And I love Turkey on so many levels, the people, the food, and the ancient, the
Yeah.
tradition, and also there's so much that's already been discovered but is still to be discovered. So when we go to Göbekli Tepe and we go back about 11,500 years, that coincides with something uh, geographically and environmentally called the Younger Dais. And it basically, as Gaia was coming out of the last ice age and temperatures were rising, there was a very short period of time which shocked that
mm,
process and temperatures plummeted. And what more and more evidence is suggesting is that there may or may not have been an impact, an extraterrestrial impact of an asteroid or a cometary fragment. We haven't really found the on land evidence for that yet, but it may have landed in the sea and caused tsunamis and a great deal else. But it could have also had what's called an airburst, where a major body sort of broke up in the atmosphere, and the impacts were much smaller, but nonetheless catastrophic. And so there is growing archaeological and cosmological evidence that something like that might have happened, and that Göbekli Tepe was actually created by the survivors almost as a monument to that, and a memory of that, and a sort of a warning of what that might be again in the future. So it's still a work in progress. There's a lot of study going on here. But again,
mm,
around the world, we're finding more and more evidence that there may well have been a pre-Younger Dais uh, societies and civilizations that were far more advanced than we've thought so far, even though the evidence is there. If you look at the traditions that come through the Americas, that come through Africa, that come through China, that come through India and beyond, there's a lot of commonality of suggestions that indeed there were one, perhaps more than one, high level societies, and Egypt, of course, highly advanced societies. At the moment, in British language and English, the jury is out, I think, for many people, but more and more, just as for extraterrestrial contact, the evidence is growing. And it's a really interesting for me, because this evidence is growing at a time when we are at the point where, our metacrisis, we really have to reframe consciously as a metamorphosis. We are at a time when we're realizing the evidence shows us a unitive, sentient universe. We are
yeah,
at a time, therefore, where it seems to me that evidence, more and more evidence of what's been our hidden history and our
mm,
extraterrestrial connections are coming forward. I mean, just to give you an example of the possibilities, Tugba,
mm,
we now know that all of the building blocks for biological organisms predate
mm,
the creation of planetary systems. In other words, when we look out into our galaxy and use things like the James Webb Telescope, we can analyze light from what's called molecular clouds. And what we found in those clouds are the building blocks of amino acids, proteins, of lipids and sugars. And now, only a couple of months ago, was reported in Nature, which is very prestigious scientific journal, that samples from an asteroid that were analyzed recently show the what's called the nucleobases of DNA and RNA. And this asteroid is older than our planetary home. And we're now realizing that when planetary systems come into being, they are gifted from these
yeah,
from these clouds, all the building kit, the toolkit, the building kit for biological
yeah,
organisms. So that's why, when we talk about our purposeful universe
yeah.
existing to evolve from simplicity to complexity, we're finding ever more evidence that shows this amazing evolutionary impulse and flow.
Yeah. Oh my God, last minutes. Oh, with you. Okay, last 8 minutes, I guess. Okay. As a scientist, my last question, I guess, as a scientist, what is it about this perfect system on Earth that amazes you the most?
For me, it's on Earth, but it's the whole universe, is this pre-planning. I mean, I'll give you an example. Einstein always said the universe is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. And I add to that, no simpler to enable it to fulfill its evolutionary impulse. So, as a cosmologist, when I look back to the beginning of the universe, I'm looking for simplicity, right? So, from the first moments, just after the universe was born, nearly 14 billion years ago, it was the simplest it could be, but no simpler. So, I asked the question when I realized, and we have the evidence, we know this, that in the beginning, it wasn't just hydrogen, which is the simplest element. It was 75% hydrogen, but 25% helium.
Yeah.
What did it need with helium? Helium just sits there. It doesn't react easily with anything, whereas hydrogen does. So you had all this helium from the very beginning. Hundreds of millions of years later, when the first stars were formed, you begin to realize why that initial helium is vital. Because in stars, there is these processes that, transmute hydrogen to helium and onwards to
Mhm.
heavier, more complex elements. And there's one reaction, and it's called the triple alpha, and it's where three helium nuclei come together to form carbon. Okay, we are made of carbon. After carbon, you move to oxygen and nitrogen and onwards to more complexity. The point is that triple alpha reaction is incredibly difficult to pull off. It's highly resonant. It takes place in a tiny, tiny window of time, and it only works 1 in 2,500 times. If that original mix from the universe that went into those early stars was just hydrogen, there would not have been enough helium to enable that reaction to take us onward to carbon. In other words, without that original helium from a few minutes after the birth of our universe, along with hydrogen, if that hadn't happened,
Yeah.
when stars were formed hundreds of millions of years later, there would not have been enough helium to come together to then take on that process to carbon. We would not be here. The whole of the evolutionary flow of our universe would have stopped there and then. We find it in biological, talk about DNA and RNA. We now
Mhm.
know that their building blocks were formed in molecular clouds before planets. But we also know that they were right first time. They've never changed. For the last 5.5 billion years, they've not
Yeah.
changed. They were so good at what they did. And there's analyses to show that when you look at the structure of DNA, it's 1 in 1 million in terms of
Yeah.
it's so effective in the way it works. So our universe has this incredible ability to pre-plan and get things right first time that enable ever greater complexity to play out. There's so much more to share, but those are the things that you look at and you go, seriously, it's all an accident? Seriously?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for this amazing broadcast, being with us, being with your Turkish audience. And also, finally, is there anything you would like to say to your audience in Turkey, here in Turkey?
I wish I could speak Turkish. It's one of the most beautiful languages. But what I would say is that I'm so delighted that we have a cosmic hologram, the book in Turkish. But I don't know if you know, about 6 months, 7 months ago, I know, I co-produced a short film called
Ah,
A Radical Guide to Reality. It's only 14 minutes, and it tells
oh,
this story for young people and truth seekers of all ages. But there was a wonderful gentleman who offered to translate it into Turkish. So when you go, I'll send you the link. It's free to watch on YouTube, free to share, free to use, and subtitled in now 20 languages, from Arabic to
oh,
Ukrainian and
super.
including Turkish.
Great. Great to hear this. And also, your last book about Gaia named, I'm so sorry, I forgot the exact name
The
of it,
story of
but
Gaia. The story of Gaia.
yeah, will this book be translated into Turkish soon?
It will if there's a Turkish publisher who would like to translate it. So
Okay.
if you know any publishers, I can put you in touch, or they would know my publisher, Inner Traditions. But we're always looking for, um, publishers who would like to do that. And I feel actually that the story of Gaia is so important because it's the story of us and the evolutionary story of our universe. And it's the story that the film, A Radical Guide to Reality, also includes. So that will be wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm excited to read soon. Please let us know, okay?
Absolutely. And if you know of any Turkish publishers, let me know. And I'd love you to watch and share with your community A Radical Guide to Reality.
Yeah, yeah, pleasure. And thank you for this great conversation with you. Thank you so much, dear Jude. And also, I hope we can have you here again
I would love that.
soon.
I would love that. Just let me know, Tugba. I would be delighted to be with us again.
Thank you. Thank you. See you again. Thank you.
Bye-bye, my dear. Have a
Bye
wonderful
bye.
day.
Thank you.